Show, we are getting you news of potentially a very large merger. We're talking about the second largest cement group in the country, which is Lafarge Holcim, which operates two companies, ACC and Ambuja, considering a merger between both the companies. The exchange filings which have been made by ACC and Ambuja separately to the stock exchanges essentially say this. They say that the board has formed a committee of directors to consider the merger. It talks about the fact that the committee of directors will look into the nuances, the need, the sense for doing a merger, if at all. The committee of directors will be formed in such a way that the majority of it is independent directors, so as to do away with any questions of propriety, etc. It explicitly says that at this point in time, there has been no decision which has been made to go ahead with the merger. It is only after the board receives the proposal from the committee of directors that it will take a final view on whether a merger is actually helpful, whether it should go ahead with the merger or not. So, I mean, that's a brief statement by both companies, ACC and Ambuja, ends with the fact that both will consider only after they receive the proposal back from the committee of directors, which would have examined the issue and then recommended a specific transaction one way or the other to the board. Let's just get some perspective on this story. Let's just get some history actually on this story. So if you can have the graphics up, how does this, I mean, there is a history to this because this has been kind of talked about for quite a bit. Both companies are owned by Lafarge Holcim. Lafarge Holcim came into the country about 10 years back. It held stakes in Ambuja and ACC directly and indirectly. It ran ACC and Ambuja as separate entities. I mean, branding, marketing, everything was essentially completely separate. Holcim, I mean, the original shareholding, before any of this, the original shareholding was that Holcim owned 41% in Ambuja directly and 10% via Holcim India Private Limited, which is HIPL, which is a 100% subsidiary of Holcim. And in ACC, Holcim India Private Limited owned about 50-odd%. Back in 2013, Lafarge Holcim announced a restructuring of the India business. As part of that, what happened was that ACC became a 50% subsidiary of Ambuja, and Lafarge Holcim owned 60% in Ambuja. Ambuja also started consolidating ACC in its books from 2016. The transaction was proposed in 2013, but it was only in 2016 that it was finally approved, and then the Ambuja started consolidating ACC in its books. The latest shareholding, I mean, the current shareholding stands something like this. Lafarge Holcim directly owns 63.6% in Ambuja, and then Ambuja owns 50% in ACC, and Lafarge Holcim also owns 4.3% in ACC. So, Lafarge Holcim 63.6% in Ambuja. Ambuja owns 50% in ACC, and directly Lafarge Holcim owns 4.5% in ACC. So this is essentially the current shareholding structure that we are talking about. There has been many times talk about a merger, and I think we have Nigel, who's with us, who actually broke that story definitively many months back, that there is a proposal. And this is something which is being considered seriously. That is ACC and Ambuja being merged together. He's with us on the phone line. Nigel, good evening. Take us through what you make of the announcements.
Well, Prashant, just a couple of things. The last 5-6 years that I've been tracking it, as you said, the merger has been long talked about. In 2013, though, when everyone was bracing for a merger, what happened at that point of time was, in fact, Holcim at that point of time, in fact, wasn't really part of this. Holcim, what they did at that point in time was that they pulled back close to around 3,500 crores. That's in mid of 2013. Now, that approval took a couple of years. That's why we see that in spite of this entire scheme of arrangement being announced, when Ambuja Cements would own more than 50% stake in ACC, the ultimate go-ahead really came for this entire, for the group only in 2016. That's because at the global level, Holcim as well as Lafarge, they merged. So that seems to have, that seems to have taken a close to around 3 years. Now, in the last few years, as you said, yes, everyone was talking about the merger. But the last time around, they were disappointed because what happened was, in fact, once Holcim announced that ACC as well as Ambuja Ambuja will hold stake in ACC, and Ambuja Cements would hold more than 50% stake. It meant draining out the organization of all their cash. And the street didn't like it one bit. So those stocks, in fact, were under pressure 2013, mid of that. Now in February this year, we here at CNBC TV18 broke that, in fact, yes, they're going to be doing the merger. And we said at that point of time that in the next 1 year, it's a possibility that, in fact, that could come about. How does this help them? This helps them because, in fact, synergy benefits will come about. The fixed costs really will reduce. For the last 5-6 years, ACC as well as Ambuja, if you put their capacities together, it's at around 30 and 35 million tons. So you're talking about 65 million tons, and it's not moved the needle much in the last 5 years or so. 65 million tons is what their current capacity is. If you just look at the other big peer, that's UltraTech Cement, it's moved from around 60 to around 95 million tons. So if in case this merger goes through, what it does is it brings synergy benefits. You also need to keep in mind that at the time of making ACC a subsidiary of Ambuja Cements, they said that there would be certain synergy benefits that will flow through. How much of that is already flowing through? That's going to be interesting. And how much more can flow through with this potential merger that is likely to take place? Just to give a couple of numbers, at current reckoning, ACC, very, very rough numbers. ACC does close to around 500 to around 550 rupees per ton in terms of an EBITDA. Ambuja Cements, well, it's always been more profitable. It does roughly around 720 to around 800 rupees per ton. So once both these two merge, then in fact the fixed cost will come down, and that in fact could spur the next leg of growth as well going ahead,
Nigel.
because they haven't done much in the last few years. But fair to say that, in fact, I think even in today's trading session, when the markets were at the low point of the day, we did see a bit of movement on both these stocks. Let's see what happens from here.
Nigel, thank you very much. Enjoy